Welcome to Two Gay Peas in a Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. This week, Bevy, we're chatting with another incredible creative who has been with both of us on our creative journey since we've been together. But she's been a huge part of my life since I started going on my acting journey after I quit my career in radio a few years ago. Penny McDonald joins us right now. Good morning, Penny.
Yay.
Morning.
How are you?
I'm very well. It's an amazing sunny, warm day in Hobart for winter. It's extraordinary.
Oh, now that we're in Melbourne, I do miss winters in Tassie. They might be a little bit crisper, especially overnight, but there's more sun in Tassie.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Now, Penny, you came into my life probably about 5 years ago, I'd say, maybe even 6. But it was when I was...
5.
Yeah, it was about 5 when I was just leaving radio and I was just about to start taking on this freelancer, crazy self-exploration acting journey. And I think I came to one of your sessions at a group acting class, and I knew straight away after working with you and how you made me feel that I wanted to work with you more, because it was like something clicked. It was like I know a journey for an actor is always so different, and they always find their own way in different ways and find what works for them. I found working with you, coming to presence, releasing tension within the body even after our first session, I was like, this is something I want to explore more with. And since then, we worked together weekly, especially through COVID. I mean, I'd exchange gardening with you for sessions with you. I think we had a really good deal going on there.
We had a great deal.
And look, what you have taught me and Bevan through lots of sessions together and through working together on different projects, it really has been phenomenal, not just in the creative parts of our life, but every part of our life. Do you agree, Bevy?
I certainly do. Obviously, we'll hear what we're actually talking about. But
yeah.
I think for me, I actually met myself for the first time. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. And which was really incredible. For the first time, I was sort of really introduced to knowing myself for what you do. And that was incredible for me. And I was like, okay, this actually makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Penny, you are known for your expertise in the Alexander technique. Why don't you get us started and tell us what is the Alexander technique?
Sure. For me, it's a process and a way of thinking about your whole self, how your physical alignment is, your breath, and your thinking. So for me, one of the key elements of the Alexander technique is thinking positively about what we want to do. And so whatever you're doing, whether it's gardening, acting, sitting at the computer, doing the dishes, there's a way of cooperating with the design of the body, and there's a way of not. And most of us, most of the time, are misusing ourselves. We might be holding too much tension. We might go to use our arms in the wrong way. We might forget we've got legs, pelvis, feet. A lot of people breathe badly. As a society and a culture, I think we're actually evolving to get sicker. So you're finding a lot more physical tension, postural problems, people not breathing well.
When you say, Penny, that we could be evolving to get sicker, what do you mean by that?
Well, I think that there was a time through our evolutionary process when we were more in a tribal community, when we were really in connection with the earth. Our feet were on the ground. We had this awareness around us of our environment, if the weather's changing, whereas now I just grab my phone and check the weather app. Whereas back then we had like the sixth sense. We were more physical. We moved. We didn't sit. There were no chairs. And so people were incredibly well aligned. They could carry weights on their head. There's still cultures that can put a weight on here and walk all day. But as our lifestyles changed and we're sitting more and we're not being active, and we're in screens. So I'm really worried about the younger generation that have got a phone in their hand all the time and they're dropped down into their phone, that are now that have got pain. Like when I was a kid, teenagers never had pain. And so what, to me, the Alexander technique is, it's learning, what am I doing with my body and with my thinking that's causing me to not be using myself the best it can be?
Mm-hmm.
And that means looking at what our habits and patterns are. Like, how do you look down at your phone, or how do you look down at your keyboard? Can you just hinge from where the head meets the spine, or can you bring your phone up to your face instead of going down to it?
Mm.
So we develop patterns and they become our habits, and we actually have to learn to use our body in a different way. And that means thinking about it in a different way. So that's where the positive thinking comes in.
I guess when I first started working with you, Penny, I mean, in school, you learn biology and the basics of it. But I guess when I first started working with you, I really started to understand how everything moves, how I became aware of how my body works more so. I was quite hunched when I first started working with you. I was a typical teen that used to play a lot of video games. I still play a few, but I know my body better now. But
absolutely. That tension was in your shoulders. It was quite visible, and an actor can't have that level of tension. Absolutely. I think we're not taught. I'd love to have Alexander teachers in every school. You know, when I run a workshop or someone comes to their first lesson, I can be pretty guaranteed that they won't know where their head meets their spine, all the way up here between the ears. They won't know where their legs meet their body. They don't know where the center of their body is, which is about 3 fingers below your belly button. So the moment I tell people that's your center, you just see they go, oh. Then they start to stand on their legs and find their feet.
Yeah.
Most people don't have their feet properly on the ground so that we can use the arch and springiness through our feet to support our whole body.
Mm. So where did the Alexander technique come from?
Oh, Alexander, Frederick Matthias Alexander, was born in Tasmania. 1869, I think. He was an actor who lost his voice. So you can imagine an actor losing their voice, that's the end of their career. And so he went to all the voice specialists going, what's wrong with me? And no one could work it out. And that's an important thing. You know, I think a lot of us these days go to someone to go fix me. And then Alexander, after realizing, he caught himself in the mirror, pulling his head back when he went to speak. And he suddenly went, I am what's wrong with me. It's something I'm doing with my body that's causing the breath to change and his voice loss to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So then he spent quite a lot of time looking at mirrors, realizing that if he changed something in his head-spine relationship, his whole body changed, his breathing changed, and his voice came back. So then he did what we would all do, which was like, oh, that works. I have to get that right. I have to keep doing that thing. And to me, this is the main essence and beauty of his work, is that he realized he had to stop trying to get it right every time and have the intention about how he went about doing it. So, yes, there is a postural alignment, there's body mapping, but the main thing to me about this work is let go trying to get it right and just be present, connected to the earth, allow the free breath, and then have an intention of what you're wanting to say, you know, with your work. So, yeah, that's its history.
It's really fun exploring all facets of the Alexander technique, and through the projects that we've worked on in the last few years, various theatre productions and whatnot, especially with the one that Bevan and I did together, A View from the Bridge, which was, I mean,
brilliant.
Still just the highlight of my life, one of them anyway. You came in and did a workshop with us when we were in our rehearsal process. And for anyone that's not an actor or hasn't seen this kind of work before, you might have seen glimpses along the way of actors say that they embrace animal work when they prepare roles, and it might look really weird when you see someone pretending to be an animal or a monkey or something. But talk to us, why would you see an actor embracing an animal in preparation for a role?
Well, I think the key, you know, if you're trying to step into the shoes of another character, there's really important things like rhythm and weight and how they see the world in terms of if they're a dominant or a not dominant, if they're a pack animal or not. And so for all of us as people, that's all the same. Some people are real pack animals, some aren't. We all have different rhythms. We all have different ways of seeing the world. And so there's something about looking at animals, and I think animals are not just for actors. Anybody that comes to me, even if they're not an actor, I say, let's have an animal for doing the dishes and for sitting at your computer. As I'm sitting here now, I can think of my, if I could think of a horse, I've got a horse tail, I've got my horse's ears, I've got that great nose that's keeping my head balanced on my spine. So we can use animal images anytime to help change our body in a different way. Yeah. But I think the thing for actors, why it's so good, is that if you're being the animal, you're not trying to think, am I getting my acting right? You're just in your body, breathing, connected, listening. I think the key thing for acting, and it would be lovely if it was for all of us, is that sense of being ready to receive information instead of pushing it out. So you're listening to the other actors. But, imagine if in our work or our relationships, we were truly listening to whoever's in the room with us. So receive Absolutely. Information, which means you need to have your full awareness three-dimensionally. So an animal never loses touch with itself in the environment. Whereas I call it like stepping out of our body. We race off to do things, and then we've lost that sense of our whole body, of our back. If you just sit here now and go, have I got a back? Have I got my feet on the ground?
Yeah.
Yeah, you just change.
Yeah, it immediately makes you become aware of your back, and you think about it, and then just immediately then I kind of feel a bit springy, like my back wants to extend a little bit more.
Exactly.
It's just the power of the thought, right?
The power of thinking. To me, this work is all about the power of thinking. And as soon as you thought about, have I got a back, you actually allowed the spine to receive the weight of the head. And that works like a weight on a spring. Hence, you suddenly felt a springiness in your spine. Perfect.
Yeah. I feel that confidence because I don't know if you remember, Penny, when I did an Alexander Technique session with you. Two amazing things happened. First thing I understood, I had this bear in me, and I felt this confidence that we found when I walked. And it was the first thing you said, which was really interesting to me, was that you have done work. You could see in my body I'd already done some work. And whether that was through trauma or working through that really surprised me, that my body, the intention, you could see already that in some ways I had already worked through some of that. And that first surprised me. But the second thing was this bearishness of me about my confidence, and I think I've taken that into work.
You've really come into your full bear these days.
Yeah, I do. Look at my beard. But but understanding that animal for me immediately put myself in a position of being very present. And the breath, as you said, all of a sudden the breath does come to you as soon as you think about that and that animal. It really does. That deep breath, all of a sudden it takes that moment and you've got that ability to take that breath.
Yeah.
And I've taken that into work, and you'd be really pleased to know I was able to share some of the things that I learned. Yeah. While we're actually doing a view from the bridge, when we're looking at the first, second and third person.
Absolutely, Penny. Now,
yes.
Because Bevan did do a session with his colleagues on first person, second person, third person. Why don't you tell us about that as well? Because that's such an important thing, and also another amazing thing that you taught us.
It's so good. So I need to acknowledge Patsy Rodenberg.
Yes.
She's a beautiful voice teacher from England. And this is her work. She's written quite a few books called Second Circle. But a lot of voice teachers love to have Alexander teachers in the room with them, because you can talk about breath, you can talk about presence, but if the person isn't connected through their body, it's going to be much harder to get it to work. So what Patsy realized is that what she called second circle is when you're truly present with someone. You're really listening to them, and that requires a coordination through you, an intention to be present. And then so if someone isn't present, they're usually too shy to be present or too full of themselves to be present.
Mm-hmm.
So what she calls first circle is the shyer person that's a bit withdrawn, that doesn't want to be there. And, if you're in that state, it's very hard to participate. Likewise, the flip side, if you're so full of yourself and think everything revolves around you and you suck all the air out of the room, you're pushing people away and you're not able to receive and listen to them either. So if you can therefore, and which you shared with me, Bev, if you are in a meeting and you choose to be in second circle with the people in the room, there's a different energy. They're not threatened.
Correct.
They're with you. I was very excited to hear that you took that notion to work and go, I'm just going to sit here and be in second circle with these people. And it was different, wasn't it?
It was. It has made my work 75 to 80% more efficient, honestly. And when I shared this we had a group meeting we all live around the country and we all came together in Brisbane. It was like a penny drop for everyone. And the intention also realizing that if you were working in first, you were working very much with past energy. Yeah. And when you're in the third person, you are very much in the future. And projecting, and that bombastic person that comes into the room, and people started to really open up and saying, yeah, look, I've been managed like that, or I've done that sometimes and I haven't found that I've been productive. It was brilliant. It was one of the
absolutely
best meetings. Yeah,
and you
wonderful.
know what, I think we do that when we're not trusting. So second circle can be scary because you have to trust.
Yes.
I'm going to be present with you and be in the moment with you. And that requires a lot of trust. Yeah.
It does. And often we find that difficult in work situations because there's a lot of things going on, sometimes industrially, personally, everywhere, to trust the people that were in there because we may have been burnt in the past or there's been issues and things. But that vulnerability, as you know, is where we find freedom. In that second person, it's the vulnerability.
Absolutely. And I think it's in that space of trust and pausing that we truly have freedom. Yeah. Absolutely agree.
So thank you again for sharing that because that's really changed the way I work. It really has.
Oh, and I love the fact that you're passing it on. I think of the whole world, if we could all be more present with each other, just imagine.
Yeah. It's such a horrible irony at the moment that the more connected we become with more apps, more social media platforms, our phones becoming faster. I mean, we've got the new Apple Vision Pros, which are coming out soon, where you'll be able to wear them on your face and you'll be able to be present with all of your social connections at any given moment. I mean, the more connected we become, the less present we are actually in our bodies, within the world, within the space we are currently in right now in this moment. So we need to work hard on these conversations.
We have to give ourselves a gap. I remember doing this first, second, third circle presence work in an acting class in Melbourne when I was still living there. And the next time I saw a group, one of the actors said, I got on the tram and I decided not to look at my phone. And she decided to be present with everyone on the tram. And people started talking to her. And she was so happy that there was suddenly this energy in the tram of communication and people talking. Because normally if you sit on public transport, boom, they're all in their phones. Yep. Me too. I go, oh, great, I can check. Use this time to check instead of being present with what's around us.
Yeah. And that's a challenge for anyone listening. You don't have to do it every time. Sure, getting on the train is a good time to catch up on life admin and whatnot, whatever you need to do. But set yourself a goal maybe this week or next week. Get on the train or the tram. Don't look at your phone once. Don't even listen to music. I did it a few weeks ago and it's really fun actually to just watch people. Isn't it?
And I think we coordinate to the task we set ourselves. So if your task is to sit on the tram or walk through the shops or down the street and choose to be present with whoever you have eye contact with, you coordinate to that. So your head-spine relationship changes, your breath is there, you're connected to the ground, you have your back. And so we actually change physically the moment we decide to be present.
Mm.
And so it's a really lovely thing to decide to do for a bit every day, to go, I'm just going to be present. And if there's no one around, be present with the picture on the wall or the view out the window or the tree you're walking past. You know, you can be present with objects too.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that.
Penny, from a creative point of view, doing this work with you over the past few years, no doubt at the beginning of starting this work, it's confronting. You learn a lot about yourself. You have to be comfortable being vulnerable. I mean, look, as an example, when we were doing animal work as a group for A View from the Bridge a couple of years ago, when you are with 6 other people in a room and you are going full monkey at each other, you have to commit, don't you? I mean, there's no halving it on that. You have to go all in and be comfortable with each other, pretending to be a monkey, mucking around for a long, it requires a lot of energy.
It does. But, you know, I think what happened to you as a group of actors in that process and how you bonded and connected, it was extraordinary. And I think it fed into the play. So it was just amazing. But yes, you know, actors have to be vulnerable. But I think we all have to be vulnerable. We all have to embrace that and live with that. And I think it makes us better people. And it means that we can be with every moment of our life.
Mm. Yeah. I am forever grateful for starting this acting journey in terms of what I've learned about myself and how comfortable I am with the person I am today. And I'm so grateful for it.
That's just, hey, I just have to say that's music to my ears for both of you. It's just, you know, it's beautiful when you work with people and you touch base with them a few months later and you just hear them going, I'm more comfortable in this body. And it's just lovely. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've it's been like a ripple on a piece of water, your work, because it just keeps reproducing and harvesting. It's beautiful. And it's been everlasting. And we can see it. And it reminds me every time of the origin of that and working with you of how that ripple effect in our lives has continued and reminds us and draws us back to those foundational breath, presence, intention. Because a lot of people do ask, you know, well, I know I'm supposed to be present, but really struggle about how do I do that?
Exactly, which is where I love. So, you know, we think in images. So the animals are always going to bring you present because they are always present. The moment you go, whatever animal you're exploring at that time, I'm just going to be my meerkat for a minute. You will become present, you know. The other thing is sometimes it's literally body mapping. If we're not feeling present, it might be, well, have I got my feet on the ground? Have I got my back? Have I got my head balanced on my spine? Am I breathing? Am I allowing my whole torso to move with breath? They're different. I sort of think of them as having tools in your tool bag. If you're not feeling present, or sometimes it could be pain or anxiety, all of those things will bring you out of being present, not comfortable with feeling vulnerable, whatever it might be. So then we go, do I want animal? Do I want body mapping? Do I want to just remind myself that I can run a new pathway? That, you know, the brain will have a, you know, like a super highway that you do the same thing every time. You get in your car and you put your hands on your steering wheel. If you come to the steering wheel with tension each time, you're going to drive, I think, potentially badly. But if you can get in the car and go, I'm going to find my sitting bones and find my back and let my hands come to the steering wheel and keep my spatial awareness, you're going to drive differently. So you run that new pathway a few times, and then that becomes your new pathway. So I'm always looking for, is there a new pathway I can do here that will make my life a bit easier, a bit tense, less effort, more present.
Penny, can you tell us how Alexander Technique came to be a part of your life?
Sure. I was working as a performer, you know, a lot of, you know, in Sydney with a street theatre company called Death Defying Theatre.
What kind of things did you perform?
So street theatre, especially back in the 80s, was we did a lot of festivals. We had this, 2 or 3 shows, and we did the same show all year, and you'd travel around. But we meant that we had bright, colourful costumes. There was juggling. There was music. We didn't have microphones the way a lot of street performers do these days. So this instrument, our body, was really needed to be tuned up, especially with a lot of the physical work, vocal work. And I met an Alexander teacher. One of the people in the company had a good friend who was training, and he just had this energy about him that was just beautiful. And he kept talking about it. So I went and had a lesson. And the next show just noticed that, back then I was the little person. So I was on the top of the shoulder stands and on the top of all the balances. And it was just easier to just get up on someone's shoulders, or the juggling is much easier if you've got a body and you've got your feet on the ground and you're not chasing the balls. And my voice felt stronger and able to carry a bigger distance. So I went, there's something in this. And I did quite a few lessons for a while, and I always thought I'd love to do this. But it was probably about 8 years before I trained. That was the time when the economy was healthy and there was funding for community theatre, and suddenly the economy changed and the government changed and there was no more work around. So I went, I'll go and train to teach the Alexander technique.
Yeah, and it's been such a huge part of your life, and you've impacted so many people. And now you train people in Alexander technique at your home in Tassie, right?
I do, yes. So I've got a little school. We're literally, our graduation party's next Saturday. So they've just finished my first 3 trainees. And you were, I think you were the first student clinic for Gem.
Correct. I think I was actually.
I think you were. You were her first body that she worked on. So they're just graduating. So I'm really proud of them. Their work is beautiful. So yeah.
Now, Penny, we can see over your shoulder there's a big poster of very famous Australian Hugh Jackman. Why is that poster there, and why have you got his autograph? You've got his autograph everywhere. Tell us.
So when I was training to teach the Alexander technique, I needed nighttime work because the course was during the day. So I started working as a dresser on the big musicals. And I'd done a couple of years of that. So I was in my 3rd year. And then I got a job on Beauty and the Beast, and Hugh was playing Gaston. And I ended up by accident having him on my plot. So your plot is, whoever you're looking after, and that's, you look after their costumes and get their quick changes ready. And I'd wanted to make sure I had the father, who was being played by Ernie Bourne, because he was in his 70s. I wanted to look after him. And Gaston was on the same plot. So no one knew who Hugh Jackman was. But when he arrived, he was very pleased that his dresser was a trainee Alexander teacher, because he'd done Alexander technique at Whopper in Perth. So we did I just worked on him. Literally, he was my guinea pig through my 3rd year of training. And then after Beauty and the Beast, he went on to do Sunset Boulevard and asked me to go and dress him on that. So by then, that was a big show for him. He was on stage virtually the whole show, except for one song. So I gave him Alexander lessons on matinee days, between the matinee and the evening shows. And also, I think he liked having an Alexander teacher as a dresser, because I could be calm in the quick changes. Sometimes you've got a few seconds to do a full change, including socks and shoes. And, so it's like, you want someone around that's calm. And I think, as a dresser, you're with an actor at their most vulnerable time, just before they go on stage. You're helping them get dressed, whatever, and working with them to the wings and getting the next change ready and stuff. So there is a quality that I think a dresser needs to have, which he was very pleased to have. So then he kept asking for me whenever he came back and did the big arena tours. So I've done 3 big arena tours with him around Australia, which has been amazing. Like, they are amazing.
Oh, that must be so special.
When you've got 15,000 people in the audience, and
Wow. Yes. Those moments just before he goes on stage must be so special for you as well, just to witness him and see how he
absolutely
gets ready.
But you know what? His belief that we are all connected, and he strongly believes in presence. He is present with whoever he's with. So, I'll be there. There might be a couple of mechanics there because he's going up in a lift, or there'll be some snazzy, or he's flying in, or, there'll be a rigger or someone there. He's present with everyone that's there. And then we'll just take literally a moment boom, he goes in. So, some actors will do that thing of, I have to be in character all the time, and they'll spend 6 months in character and could be horrendous to live with. That's not you. If he's talking to you, he'll be present with you. If he's talking to this person, he's present with them. And then it's like, now that second before I'm stepping into the shoes of whoever the character is, or if it's just him going on stage. But, his sense is that, we were all a family. He knew the name of everyone on that crew, and there were 200.
That's incredible.
On the crew. He got to know everyone. They were all part of his family. Whereas a lot of those big stars, they don't, it's like you're not even allowed to talk to them. People say, he's coming into our office and talking to us. We don't know what to do. He's just lovely. Lovely.
Yeah.
And, he enjoys having Alexander technique.
I have to ask Bevan something while you're here, Penny. So last year, after I did my first Shakespeare show, The Winter's Tale, I did a show with Blue Cow Theatre in Hobart called Amy's Tattoo, where I played a 16-year-old champion swimmer. And for me, this was a big deal because it was the biggest role I've ever had so far as an actor. I was pushing myself to my absolute limits. I was playing a 16-year-old, for goodness sake, and he was a champion swimmer. So I started swimming again and really trying to really embody this a lot. And as I'm going through my own journey as an actor, I'm working out what works best for me as well. So I have to ask you, Bev, what was it like while I was going through that process of becoming this 16-year-old character for that role when I was really taking it seriously too?
I don't think we've got enough time.
Oh, come on.
What Penny said's really true. I mean, living with you was, that was brutal, because there was some trauma for you.
Yeah.
Back at that age.
Yeah, well, I've got to say, it did bring back a lot of memories of my own 16-year-old experience, which for the most part wasn't great.
Yeah. And I think, Penny, whether you agree or not, there's a fine line from living it and experiencing it and drawing experience to bring into your character. But when it broke you, I mean, you had a break moment, didn't you?
I started listening to all of the music that Matt listened to when he was 16, going through all of the, the bad headspace that I was at that point in time and everything that got me through it. So I really dived right back into what I went through as 16. And I honestly think at the end of the day, though, it was reasonably healing because I moved through it a lot. But I had a big breakdown in a rehearsal one day. I was pushing myself in a monologue, and I had this, I can't explain it, but I was like wailing, and I couldn't. I remember you telling me, stop me crying.
Matt, I think what you just said is that you said in some ways, I think it was a bit healing. I think it was definitely a bit healing. You've just talked to me now about your child, your teenage years, much more in control of them, and knowing that was your past, but it's not informing what you do anymore. And I think actors, our life experiences for actors are your tools to take to the show. You obviously can't let it pull you apart. And within the rehearsal period, there might be a little bit of emotional stuff. Probably listening to Matt's music was not a good idea. You probably should have listened to what would that character be listening to.
Absolutely. Yes.
If I'd known you'd done that.
Yeah.
But I think, yes, it is a fine line. I think our history is what we bring to the character, but we can't let it undo us. But I think if approached in the right way and with the right intentions, it does help us heal our history. I think the good actors are probably the most emotionally stable because they have dealt with all of their, past traumas because they use them.
And I mean, I'm certainly grateful for that experience. I did learn how far I could push myself. And in the process, I did some healing. As traumatic as some parts of that journey were, I'm very grateful for it.
And your performance was extraordinary. You were just amazing. And that hurt and, the trauma of your childhood, you put into that character who was so traumatized, and so brilliant, just brilliant.
Yeah, he went through a lot, that kid.
He was. I'd be interested to see other partners of actors and how they deal with that. of going through those journeys too. And I mean, for me, it was also drawing you. You physically changed too. All the beard was gone, the hair became longer, so your physicality also changed. And I very much had to sort of resign myself to that also, that the person that I love is working and dealing with this and having to support you through that, but drawing you sometimes back. It's sort of like, come back to the light.
Yeah, like at the end of a rehearsal day or something.
Yeah. I'd have to come back. And again, it's about that being present, Penny, about bringing him back to Matt, bringing him back to me every time. And it is a partnership. Yeah, it was hard but good to do that with you together. I learned a lot about your method and how you work through that. So for future things, I'm a lot more prepared as a partner to go through that with you than I would have been if I didn't have it.
Beautiful. I know there's the support network for actors is really important, really important. But I think the your work ethic is good, and I think that's how you were able to deal with that. And you have to have a warmed up voice and body, and I think the process of warming up helps ground you and center you, and so I would be curious to see the rehearsal where you did lose it, how well you had warmed up, how grounded and prepared you were.
Sure.
And that sort of thing. So I think, Yeah.
In particular, it was a monologue where it was kind of, it was like the pinnacle of emotion. Like he was expressing everything, screaming it out to his mum and his dad and it's just so hard. It's hard to differentiate the whole I'm screaming because I'm screaming, or it's screaming because it's coming from something. And like bringing that something up in the moment is really hard sometimes, especially if you're doing it again and again and again and again after an already 8-hour day rehearsing.
But that's why it's also so important that you put the character to bed at night and leave them at the theatre. It's like, I've told your story. Yep. Thank you. We told your story. I'm putting you, you're staying here in the theatre. You don't want to take the character home with you. They certainly don't want to come into bed with you and be in your thoughts at night. Yeah. It's like, leave them there. Yep. We'll see you tomorrow when we tell your story.
Definitely
again.
Not.
Absolutely.
Definitely not in that example. You touched on something, Penny, which is, I felt really important that we all sometimes struggled with, was the warm-up. And the prep beforehand. And often it gets skipped a little bit because obviously, as Matt has explained, some individual actors have their different methods of warming up. Some like to do it by themselves. But coming together as a group, we always found so good.
Definitely. For A View from the Bridge, that family vibe that we had before every show, we'd always get together and sing a little chant and hold each other's hands. And it made such a difference.
It's so important. It's so important. Yep. I know. Yeah.
So, Penny, speaking to anyone in a creative field today, or just anyone in general that might like to explore more of what we're talking about today, Alexander technique, how they can become more in tune with their body, what can people do?
Well, I think find an Alexander teacher near you. Hope, if you're in Melbourne and Sydney, Hobart's now got a few more. But there's a website called AUSTAT, AUSTAT, which has got the list of all the Alexander teachers around Australia. If you're hearing about it and go, oh, gee, my sister would love that and she's in England, there's, all around the world, there's Alexander teachers. You just need to really Google them. You could even just Google Alexander technique in your suburb and people that are around you would come up. I love doing group classes with people. So you might find there's group classes around. Or go and have some private lessons. But if you can't find a teacher, you can just give yourself 5 or 10 minutes every day to get in contact with yourself. I like to suggest people lie down on the ground with their knees bent and their head on a couple of paperback books. You want to have your head balanced on your spine, not dropped back, not so high that it's squished forward. And just get in touch with your body. Just lie down for 10 minutes every day. Think through your body. Allow your breath to change. Body map your arms, your legs. You just start to change. And then have a roll around on the ground. Do the things that you did as a child. Do some crawling, some rolling. All those early movements that we did that when we first stood up had us beautifully balanced. And then we go to school and we have competitions and we sit on chairs, and like you see babies with phones in prams. So all those, there was a time when you came with length in your body to try and get back into that. So we have to work on ourselves. Even if you're lying down and you go, I'm just going to breathe in and out for four or five counts on every breath for 10 minutes. That's going to completely change how you are. So we do need to stop, pause, come to quiet, allow new things to happen in the body.
Yeah. I mean, something that we've explored over the last few years together as well is just open floor dancing and open movement, which you got us into as well.
Yes.
Which also just, you can feel so much freedom in your body.
I know. Go dancing. I love it. That's my soul food. I mean, I do all the things I just said, but whenever I can, I go dancing. We even have a group that meet and dance in the park every Monday, just because, which we started during COVID, and we just kept going. So moving, dancing, that's great. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. And now you have your website as well. Tell us about that, because...
So that's called harmonicmotion.com.au. I've got a couple of good videos on there for people to watch, a lot more information about the Alexander technique. So, that's my website.
And your email, on your website, people can sign up to be part of your email list, which I love because... You've got your beautiful dog, Ollie, and you send out your email newsletters, which is Ollie's tips.
I do. So people can come and sign up to my newsletter, or they can just email me, which is penny@harmonicmotion.com.au. And I'd love to add you to my newsletter, yes, because my dog, and again, I use Ollie as my marketing, but because animals are always present, Ollie sends out little tips, and they might just be little things like just soften your gaze or be kind to yourself. Just to remind ourselves to be kind to ourselves is like, oh, how often do we do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And though you're in Hobart, you travel?
I do travel. I do.
There we go. I love that.
Oh, Penny, I from the bottom of my heart, I love you so much, and I appreciate you, and I'm so glad that you are part of my life and our life, and I'm so grateful for what you've given me as well. So thank you so much for diving into this today.
Oh, pleasure. I love both of you so much, and you teach me too. So I learn from you, and I've been so joyous to have you in my life, and I was so happy to be at your wedding.
Yes! Oh, yes. We did have a little wedding.
We actually haven't mentioned this yet.
No. Yes, we got married a year and a half ago for anyone watching. We just had a little picnic on our lawn, and we had a bit of a surprise. We were just going to elope, just the two of us, but...
it turned into something else.
It turned into just a few extras, having a little picnic at our house.
For our renovation open home.
Yes. And then a surprise celebrant came, and Penny was one of our... gorgeous guests there. Thank you for being there.
I love the love the two of you have for each other, and your passion for connection and life is just beautiful. So even the fact that you're doing this podcast, it's beautiful. So thank you.
Well, I'm so excited for more people to hear your story and hear about Alexander Technique and your passion for this, because your passion for this gave me the passion for this. So let's just keep this chain going, shall we?
Let's do it. Okay. Thank you both. Love you heaps.
Thank you so much, Penny. Love you too. Thanks for joining us this week on Two Gay Peas in a Pod. Hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up to show us some love, and we'll see you next week.